While walking through the Powerhouse Mall recently, I noticed something strange. A plaque indicating a 215-year-old house on the mall property. I investigated and discovered that there are actually 3 small structures in the mall that are about 200 years old. 2 are now self-contained stores. And 1 is part of a large store. How did they get there?
The Powerhouse was a concept that we put together back in the mid-'80s. The property was actually owned by the City of Lebanon, and we were one of 2 or 3 developers that put proposals into the City of Lebanon, and our proposal was to create a retail mall using some of the or working on the existing architecture of the Powerhouse, the original structure. So when we were awarded or our proposal was accepted by the City of Lebanon, we started the design process, and it was to put a retail center together with an arcade building, central arcade building, which is the main building of the Powerhouse, and then creating some pad locations, if you will, with the buildings, the 3 buildings that are incorporated in the site. So it was part of an overall site design. We had crews that were actually finding old houses for us. There was a mason, Rick Millen, that we used that did all the brickwork on the 3 buildings, and he was instrumental in finding some of the older structures. We would either purchase the timbers from old buildings, or we actually had a crew that would go out and dismantle them so that we could recreate them and redevelop them on the location. So the buildings are collections of old capes and old that were collected throughout New England. The original concept of kind of colonial design came up. We had developed 13 Dartmouth College Highway. That's when I first started working in the Upper Valley back in '79, and we did the same thing there. It's basically taking older structures, old timber frame structures, and recreating them on the site. So the site plan, there are the 2 houses as you come in. We call the gate houses, and the design was dictated by the structures themselves, and then adapted to retailers' needs as far as what kind of interior spaces were needed. The other one is, again, was a part of is actually attached to the original Powerhouse, but the original Powerhouse, which is the flat-roofed structure, that was actually a powerhouse. It had the old turbine in the basement. It still has the turbine pits down there.
Well, I'm going to say your water came through the pipe to turn your turbines, and then transfer it to a belt driven. I guess this is part of your turbines. That one. You know, this one. But this part here, it probably at one point was the cog. So as water came through, this turned. Turn this, turn that, over to the drive belt.
And there was a sluiceway that came down through the property that basically fed the turbines. It was a sluice way that basically took water from the Mascoma River and ran it through the powerhouse. The turbines had been, I'm not sure when they stopped generating power, but again, in the design of the powerhouse, it was coming up with a design that basically took the powerhouse and integrated that design, that brick structure, and putting two wing buildings on, and then that other cape structure is actually attached to one of the wings of the powerhouse. So it was a inclusive design. All the buildings here, again, the only original building was the original powerhouse, and it was coming up with a a specialty retail design that we thought would be an attractive development. There was actually a fellow by the name of David Firm that was in the business of finding old timbers and old frames and selling them. So we, and again, I cannot tell you which buildings, who was the source, if you will, of the buildings. But there were several crews back then that were buying, purchasing older buildings that had been basically abandoned, and tearing them down. And again, we were interested in the old frames, but at the same time, David would take old doors, if there were doors or flooring or that sort of thing. I'm not sure, again, it's been a while since I've been in the buildings, as to the interior of the buildings. Typically the frames were reused. And then again, if there was flooring available that came with them, we'd incorporate that into the flooring, that sort of thing. So it was trying to be respectful of the of colonial design. Back then I was doing a lot of reproduction work, colonial design work, and both just through stick building and also timber frame, old frame building. So I originally came up to this area because the mason I was using, I was building a house down in Hopkinton, New Hampshire, and the mason I was using had taken an old frame down and had it for sale. And that's when Bain Stevenson came down and bought the frame from Rick Bell, the mason, and asked Rick, I said, if you know anybody that would know how to put this back together, and that's how I met Bain, and we started developing 13 to Harvard College Highway, which is now the Village on Route 10, just south of Lyme. Property on this project, there was a team. Again, Basin Company was the developer. Randy Mudge, who still has an office in Lyme, R.T. Mudge and Associates, was the architect. Jim Kennedy was involved in the site planning, so it was that team basically that took the property and put the plan together as far as creating a kind of a unique retail center. We did that research as far as researching the origin and trying to find the original owners, so giving the houses some identity as to their history, and being respectful of the fact that they were relocated and that they were developed or originally built by early settlers of New England.
So who were the original owners of these buildings? There were 3 Eleazar Wheelocks in the Hanover area. The first Eleazar Wheelock was born in 1711. He moved to Hanover in 1769 and was the founder of Dartmouth College and its first president. He had 8 children. His son, Eleazar, the second Eleazar Wheelock, was born in 1756 in Hanover. He married and moved to Ohio with his family in 1806, and then to Illinois, where he died in 1811. His son, the third Eleazar Wheelock, was born in 1793 in Hanover. He moved to Ohio and then Illinois, fought in the War of 1812, and while living in Illinois, began to invest in Texas real estate. In 1833, he moved his family to Texas. The town of Wheelock, Texas was named after him. In Texas, he was a surveyor, land agent, lawyer, rancher, farmer, and soldier. He died in 1847. Most likely the workshop which is now in the Powerhouse Mall belonged to the second Eleazar Wheelock, and when he moved his family to Ohio in the early 1800s, its ownership passed to one of his brothers. Hiram Patch was born in 1824 in Francistown, New Hampshire, not far from Bennington. He was a farmer, a manufacturer, a bank executive, and during the 1860s he was a New Hampshire state legislator. In March 1893, he was one of the principals in the newly formed Francistown Water Company, which was granted eminent domain to bring water into the villages of Francistown and Mill Village by underground pipes. He married and had 3 children. His son Charles held office in Francistown, and his other son, Hiram Edson, was a farmer, lumber dealer, and also served in the New Hampshire state legislature. Today, there is a Hiram Patch Lane in Francistown. Charles Gilkey came to Plainfield, New Hampshire from Connecticut in the late 1770s. He was a farmer and leased a farm from the state of New Hampshire for 999 years. He married and had 5 children. His son Charles inherited the farm, and eventually it passed to another son named James, who was a representative in the New Hampshire legislature. One of his sons, named John, continued to live on the farm. It appears that in 1909, the artist William Howard Hart bought part of the property, including the farmhouse, and he somewhat redesigned the farmhouse, which became his cottage. It was torn down and rebuilt in the Powerhouse Mall, where it bears the name of its original owner.
It was a fun project putting together because, again, it was taking an existing property. Again, the city of Lebanon was very interested in having the property developed, and so we, it's the first retail project we had done, and had a lot of fun putting it together.